Hello, everybody. Welcome back. This is another episode with Scott, and I think this will be the last intro I will do for the episodes with Scott. I probably got some of you excited there for a second, thinking that this may perhaps be the last intro, and you don't have to listen to my ranting and rambling and whatever sort of blathering that comes out of my mouth before the beginning of all these episodes. But I think we're just going to keep continuing doing these episodes as well as the upcoming other special guest episodes. But for those, the ones with other guests, I'll probably still have intros to sort of lay the framework of what's going on in those respective episodes. It just doesn't seem reasonable to keep doing intros for all these episodes with Scott. You'll sort of get the idea, and we'll, as we do in this episode, lay out the framework at some point right at the beginning or somewhere near the beginning. And I think the episodes with Scott also are going to give me a bit of an outlet to cover a lot of broader issues and speak my mind on a certain array of things. As in some of the past intros, I use those to have some monologues at points and addressed some concerns that were on my mind, but I think I'll be able to do away with those for the foreseeable future as well, and just utilize the platform of me continuing to talk with Scott to discuss those. So yeah, that's about it, and I hope you enjoyed the episode. Cheers, guys. So what were we going to talk about again today besides Stevie Wonder and stuff?
Well, something that I thought was like particularly subversive is shit Trump got right.
Oh, right. Yeah. Everybody's favorite topic.
Coming from a couple of lefties, or yeah, you're kind of like a moderate Canadian, but on American standards, you're
a communist. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And so none of us have got any love for Trump at all. But now that he's out a little bit, and you can take a step back and unplug. There are some things that he got right, and there are some things that he was right about that I was wrong about at the time. And it's easier for me to in retrospect to admit that. So that's one topic. As it relates, I don't know how we can relate it to COVID, because there's not much that Trump did right as far as COVID goes. I can't think of it other than Operation Warp Speed, which.
Let's try to do that first, I guess. Okay. We'll try to have at least some COVID-y stuff, but if you don't like it, if you don't like everybody, then tough shit, because we're gonna ramble. But yeah, we could. I've tried to go over this, and it was just too easy for people to say, "Well, Trump got everything wrong," and that's how a lot of this just people falling over backwards to admire Anthony Fauci would come from, or just really thinking that so much is going to go better with the Biden administration.
Yeah, Fauci became like a mascot for whichever side you were on. He was either an angel or the devil.
Yeah, and it's still that way. It's still he's this. I don't want to say anything too hyperbolic. Like, I don't think even like the most sycophantic person in like a Stephen Colbert like show, or anybody at MSNBC or any of the Twitterati have like held him in a sort of like Jesus like reference. It's not that far, but he's seen as this infallible authority to some, and just the figure to go to on anything involving the pandemic when he's fucked up a ton and severely. And I sidebar it for a while so we can stay on the Donald. But like the big story now happening right now is sort of I haven't read the Vanity Fair article yet. I got to get on that, but the new information about
Gain of function.
yeah, but yeah, about everything that he apparently, like I can't speak as if I know all the details, so I shall not. But that everything involving the NIH and funding towards gain of function, all of which he vehemently denied for months and months and months, culminating in the well watched video of him and Senator Paul going at it, which was just also another those things and people living in two different worlds. If you're in one world, it's like Rand Paul just drop kicked him in the throat, and if you're living in the other world, Fauci stood his ground against the big mean Republican. But yeah, he's that with Trump, screwing up so much and just taking that hardline position of just everything Trump did is bad. It gave more of an avenue for people than to look at Fauci as sort of this antagonistic character to Trump, which Trump did help along. He was very, eventually, not at first at all, but eventually he did become very antagonistic towards Fauci. But yeah,
And I wonder if that's just because because Fauci became a media darling and was contradicting Trump, but trying to do his best to be mild about it. And like there's this one interview where he was like, Fauci was saying, "What do you want me to do? Tackle the president on stage? I can't stop him from saying X, Y, and Z, even though it's wrong." And maybe that was the point where he and Trump started getting at odds with each other. Or maybe it was just because Fauci was getting all this airtime and adoration, and that sort of stuff is hard for Trump to take,
to say the least.
It's
that may be understating it. But yeah, what did so yeah, it was too easy to just wholesale throw Trump under the bus. The same thing with Boris Johnson. But so what did Trump get right then? Yeah, I guess the easy one you mentioned right off the bat, Operation Warp Speed, which I've had private conversations with people, and it's weird how ideas will wiggle into social consciousness that even by the time like March rolled around, like this year, people would forget that was a Trump initiative, and almost like conflated Trump with this sort of anti-vax figure, even though he got vaccinated,
right?
And he initiated that whole thing. They just by default just thought that this was a Biden thing, and then even people I would grant probably cynically motivated, but pulled out compilations of videos of like Kamala Harris saying, "Well, I wouldn't want to take this." Now, I'm paraphrasing to the nth degree,
Right.
but this Trump vaccine and like and posturing as she does in the most sickening bunch of D-grade acting. Like watching her on TV just repulses me. But just like I would question this vaccine and all of that, which is thankfully that it's good that that's sort of washed out of people's memory, because that sort of stuff had a risk, it didn't happen, of pushing people away from the vaccine.
Right.
And would they have kept playing the same song if Trump won the election? And and the vaccine is the Trump vaccine? How the hell? Like I would imagine it would change. It would change. It would have to change in some way, but things have just gotten so maddening that, how would that have played out if the Democrats are going to be antagonistic towards Trump as he's trying to get the vaccine rolled out? Or would he also try to, and would there have been the same this new brand new type of right wing anti-vaxxery? Would have that happened as such, or would have Trump even, or would it have happened? And
I
would
don't think it would have had nearly as much steam behind it.
yeah, it might not have. Maybe it kind of would have, and Trump maybe would have tried to play into that because he likes to pander to a base. But anyway, yeah, in general, Operation Warp Speed was, a
Massive success.
It was a massive success, and the
I don't know how
idea.
much credit we should give to Trump for it. It's not like he made the rat vaccine or set up the fast tracks or came up with the plan or the idea or even the name. He did have the good sense to say, yeah, vaccine sounds like a good idea, do that.
Yeah, he didn't get in the way of it, and
right.
he didn't. I can't recall a single point in time where he was obstructing it at all, and really pushed it along, and it resulted in, it's unfortunate because there's, compared to almost any other country, the United States is very disproportionate in how many people haven't gotten vaccinated at this point. But with the American vaccine agenda, starting with Operation Warp Speed, it got to the point where the Americans were, one of the first countries, really just after Britain and Israel, to really have a whole bunch of vaccines being pumped out early this year.
Yeah, and U.S. in the end got to save the world in its little way from the natural disaster, kind of like in the movies. Not exactly the way I envisioned U.S. would save the world, just like in the movies, but yeah, we had several vaccines that were successful and are being used across the world, and we could have done better with that. I think we could have ramped up production and built up a whole lot of soft capital and goodwill around the world by making the vaccine available to everybody, and that also cover our own behind, because if we don't vaccinate the world, then COVID will just keep spreading, and the more it spreads, the more it mutates, and it'll eventually come right back to America. It's not like it would stay out unless we wall off the continent or something.
Yeah. So what's going to happen in the future with it? Well, it is already still kind of coming back. Like Britain's going through a big surge right now, and it looked like, I was just listening to another John Campbell episode today from a few days ago, and like he was pointing out that the U.S. numbers are going down, but testing's going down. It's the same thing. I don't know about Canada as a whole, but it's the same thing in Saskatchewan. But like our test positivity rate here is 14, which is pretty abysmal.
Pretty shitty, yeah.
It's well in the shitty category.
It means you don't know what you got. You don't know how much it is out there.
No, well, and what's really a big change of tune for here in Saskatchewan is that some of the chief medical health officers in some of the other provinces are really in people's scopes for people who run in our circles, particularly the ones in Alberta and BC. But the one here in Saskatchewan, he's been okay, but usually he's been like kind of calm and like, we'll wait to see what happens. But now he's sort of like, we're fucked. We got to do something now. This is not good, which is a way I haven't really seen him phrase anything. And Lots of groups of physicians are singing the same tune. So like the numbers have gone down as with testing, and the premier will go along with that. He seems to not want to do anything, and until we're just well, actually, I don't know to what extent we'd have to be fucked before he would do anything because
Yeah.
we're already shipping ICU patients to Ontario, which is thousands of kilometers away, and the military have come in. I think that's our first time getting people from the military, and I'm not even sure if Alberta did that. Ontario did for sure. I think and Quebec, but yeah, this is our first time of having to have military deployed to help with the medical crisis. This far into it all. So, uh, yeah. What was I? Oh, right. With what's going to happen in the long term. Yeah. So I was listening to that John Campbell episode, and like he was pointing out that things aren't looking so good in Britain right now, and so it's a lot of numbers are going up. I looked at it looked like the international figures overall have plateaued and starting to go up. So on an international level, it's
Starting to go up, you said?
Yeah, starting to go up. So it's sort of like the international sixth wave. And but at the same time, the core of this episode, he was discussing how he's not so concerned about a new variant that is going to be just absolutely catastrophic. He's not so sure that there's going to be one that's going to. He doesn't think that there's enough mutations to get to the point where it'll spread like B16172 and B117, but at the same time have a large amount of of vaccine immunity circumvention, like where people were worried about with that South African one, B1351, or whatever the hell it is.
Yeah.
So, yeah, what's going to happen in the long term? Not too sure.
So,
See,
what are you saying? Like, is the vaccines give the virus little room to go?
that's what the impression I've gotten. So I think the bigger issue that we might have with the vaccines, maybe not worrying about one that's not going to stop working. I also just happened to read an article today where vaccine developers already have a plan where they can modify it within 100 days if need be. So that's something pretty optimistic there. So I think then the worst issue is just that it seems like the immunity wanes a lot faster than we initially thought. But to how long does it take? Because it's not like you're immune one day and then you're not immune the next day. It's all really gradual. So I don't think there's much information on exactly how much it wanes, and so that we can. Well, there's certainly information on that, but not so that we can have a full picture of what it is. So that might be just the bigger problem, is just having things that are maybe a little more transmissible than the Delta that's kicking everybody in the shins right now. Maybe a tiny little bit more immune resistant, which is enough. Like this variant was enough to cause global catastrophe, even after the Kent one caused its own respective global catastrophe. So that's worrisome enough. So I think dealing with that and then trying to get booster updates for however frequent we need to do that. So you never know, and it's not like I have the full scientific understanding of all of this uh, to really give any sort of forecast. But yeah, I haven't heard much noises made that there's much of a worry that something really brutal will evolve, and then we'll have just a whole new type of catastrophe on our hands.
On that note, hey, great news. Yeah, I hope we should find out by December. I think we anticipated a bad wave last year around the wintertime because one, there was a whole lot of travel and students going home and that sort of thing. And two, everybody, especially in the northern states, wanted to be inside in closed spaces. And so that was a recipe for some really bad events. And here we are, we're about what 60% vaccinated, and if Delta spreads twice as fast, I don't know how much uh, that level of vaccination is going to blunt the winter wave. I was just hoping, it seemed like maybe it's going to die out, or maybe it's going to be subdued this year, and at least for the U.S., it looks like we're on that trajectory. But the Britain thing is disturbing, and and the U.S. cases aren't really going down. I mean, we're still losing 1,500 people a day in the U.S. And Britain, looked like it was going down, and then it just curved right back up. And we're like, what the hell? Is it just people going inside?
I'm not sure. Well, that sort of ties back to because Israel's had some tough times too, and that's of course where a lot of the initial concerns about vaccine immunity not lasting
Right.
the year, or even the rosy optimistic
6
pictures
months, it
of
looked like.
two.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's looking more like in the 5-6 area, like 5 when things start to dip, where the honeymoon starts to end. And so that might be that's quite possibly a component that's going on in the UK. Then is that a lot of the older people and middle-aged people who would have got their second dose a long time ago now. Yeah, like there was very elderly people that were getting their first dose just after Christmas, before the new year,
Right.
in England. So that's a long time ago. And shittier weather, yeah, I'm not too sure, but yeah, and when Campbell was talking about this episode, he's worried about possibility of 1,000 new hospitalizations a day in the UK, which is unmanageable. But at this point, yeah, where there's still these kinds of outbreaks going on, it's there's nothing that looks cataclysmic on the horizon. The vaccine seems to be doing a pretty handy job on preventing a lot of suffering from occurring. But the weeds are still thick ahead. I don't see nothing that would give me too much confidence to say that the clearing is just over there. I just have no I have no idea.
Yeah. I'm not convinced yet that it's going to be beat this year, or even next year. Maybe after the winter, it'll die down to a point where we have close to an effective herd immunity, where it can spread only to a few people, and it stops because there's not enough people to infect. But
there was a lot of talk about that a year and a half ago, or not quite a year and a half ago, like 16 months ago. There's a lot of talk about that, and there was also
every
a lot
month
of talk.
They were saying,
yeah,
herd immunity is right around the corner.
Yeah, exactly. So I just sort of given up on that thought. It just if it comes, it comes. But I'm not like the new forecast.
Definitely don't want to bet on it.
Yeah,
but it's been 6 months since I've had my vaccine, or my second shot. So
so you would have got it.
It was you had Moderna.
Oh, okay.
It's the more effective, and they believe that Moderna lasts a bit longer.
But, yeah, that's what I've heard now. Before Pfizer was the gold medalist. Now it looks like Moderna's passed them in the vaccine race. Yeah, so you would have got it at the end of April.
Yeah.
Geez, yeah, it was a while ago. What is the idea for boosters in the U.S. right now?
From what I understood, the White House wanted to make the booster available to everybody by mid-October, as I remember. But I haven't heard
To everybody. Yeah, you can just do that all at once.
Well, as in prepare to be able to give
okay.
the booster.
Oh, okay.
There was some kerfluffle about that among the what was it, the FDA and the CDC. They had some sort of disagreement on who was taking the reins there, and when they were going to go with that. So I don't know. If it's made available to me, I sure as hell will take it because my wife is high risk, and her dad is high risk. If I didn't have to worry about them, if I just had to worry about me, I wouldn't worry. But I, there are other people in my life besides me,
Oh,
and yeah, I don't want them to die or get hospitalized or get some sort of debilitation from long COVID or I don't want to risk any of that shit. We made it this far, and we're still not even convinced that we didn't even have it. Lucy half thinks that my wife thinks that she may have gotten it very very early on. She because her brother came back from China. Uh, I believe it was like September, October of 2019. And we didn't know, COVID-19 was a thing back then. China didn't even know it was a thing back then. But in retrospect, it was a thing. We're pretty sure it was out and about in August or shortly thereafter.
yeah.
So it's unlikely, very unlikely, but possible that she had it. She had loss of
when you said very early on, I was thinking March. Do you mean like earlier, like January or something?
Yeah, January of 2020 is where. Yeah, her brother came back in like September of 2019, and we both got sick, but she got more sick. But she always gets more sick than I do. And there was a loss of smell there, which she remembered in retrospect. But that's all we have to go on. So it's possible. I kind of doubt it, and I operate on the assumption that I haven't had it yet.
Yeah, that like to get it in 2019, like there was probably a bunch of people that did get it like that early on. And there's no testing. We didn't know. We don't really understand much about it. So yeah, there could have been a bunch of people who had it early on, and we'll just never really know. But at this point, like, you don't want to get it again.
Right.
Yeah, I certainly don't.
If I could be sure I got it in a very controlled environment, I'd be okay with that. If I'm like, okay, I'm going to get it, Thursday, and okay, I will, hole up in my little hole for a couple weeks, and eat Pop Tarts or whatever, and then yeah, I should have a more robust sort of immunity, and it would put my mind at ease, knowing that that would just be an extra line of defense against being able to transmit.
All right, we were gone for a while, but that was 0 seconds for everybody. I had to go feed the cows and the chickens and stuff. We'll go with that. Yeah, so let's just get back to Trump, I guess.
Yeah,
We
I thought of a
as is our signature, we got sidetracked on a whole bunch
right.
of stuff. But
Yeah,
yeah, so we went over the warp speed. What else? And actually, we've done a lot more COVID than I thought. But like before we get onto the non-COVID stuff that Trump got right, is there anything else that he got right
I thought of
in
a
the
couple of
pandemic?
things during the break. Uh, when he started wearing a mask in the summertime of
Mm.
2020, I was like, "Yay!" Because uh, the mask thing was really convoluted at first, and nobody knew what to do.
It's still kind of
And
convoluted. Like, I still go to the store and everybody's wearing like the most garbagey, dumpy mask imaginable, and
right,
it's there's. But anyway, I'll leave that aside. But yeah, it's still kind of a mess, but less messy than it was, May of 2020.
right. But a lot of it by the summertime, a lot of Trumpists didn't want to wear masks anymore,
Mm-hmm.
and it was really important that the president actually put on a mask and be like, look, this is serious, and you can limit the spread. You can't stop the spread, but you can retard it. You can impede it. You can make,
Mm-hmm.
stop it. If you can stop it from spreading to just one person, uh, multiply that by millions. You can bring the R value down, and if you can do that, then other measures such as distance and air movement and all the other things, can add up the Swiss cheese method.
Mm-hmm.
I think you're familiar. I'm still a big fan of that. I think that's mostly correct. There's never going to be any one thing that's going to stop this, but it's combined arms, and so I end up going with a war kind of metaphor with COVID a lot because I think it's a pretty good analog. It's um, it's total war. It's us against the virus. Um, we can't negotiate with it. The virus doesn't care what we think. So we have to kill it. We have to win. One thing is you can't fight what you can't see, and something that was really important to me. Uh, that my pet peeve was testing and testing as much as possible. Using different techniques for amalgamating testing, and then if you get a positive, you can take that subgroup and then give them all individual tests, and you can kind of save resources a little bit that way.
Mm-hmm.
But when the rapid test came in, Michael Mina especially laid it out really clear. Uh, Even though the tests weren't as good, um, you had more false positives, you had more false negatives. It's better than nothing in the sense that you would test people that otherwise wouldn't be tested, and you'll have false positives, but you can't assume that test is just like a passport. And you'll also have false negatives, which means a couple more people will need to isolate,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, that's inconvenient, but it would also it gave you a chance to bring a lot of people, a lot of infected or particularly infectious people, take them out of the population quickly.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't. We would only see where the virus had been a couple of weeks ago, and by the time we see it, by the time the tests start showing up and people start going to the hospital, the spreading events have already happened, and the virus is burning through an adjacent population.
Mm-hmm.
And so contact tracing is more or less useless at that point. But if you can get them when they're infectious, which is often before they even show symptoms, and get them out quickly, you could at least bring the R value down.
Mm-hmm.
And it may cost, hundreds of billions of dollars to test everybody, or most everybody, once a day for a year. Da da da. It's not a trivial amount of money, but considering the amount of money that the U.S. had to pick out of the air to make this happen, and every other company or every other country on Earth, had to commit a whole lot of resources and either go into debt or inflate their money supply,
or both.
right. Every single country had a fiscal whammy that completely screwed up their budgets. And you can argue whether this or that part of the spending was a good idea or not. But the U.S., for example, spent like 15 trillion. I don't know, just trillions upon trillions. No, I think it's less than 15 trillion. But like bumped up our entire debt by like 25%. And I mean, it's scary stuff. I mean, I'm not sure how that's going to manifest itself, but you can't do stuff like that without consequences. Anyway, back to the point. It would be money well spent in the rapid tests because we had a shot at eliminating it from the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I thought if we use these tests a lot, because we could find out right where COVID is, not where it was, and be able to observe, almost in real time how it's moving through the population.
Mm-hmm.
And all you got to do is get that replication value below 1, and that was a whole lot easier to achieve before the Delta variant. And I could be wrong. It could be impossible. I thought that this is one of those impossible human endeavors that needed to be attempted anyway. I mean, going faster than the speed of sound was thought impossible. Landing on the moon was, looking at our better angels, I'd like to think that humans are here to do great things. And this could have been one of them. This would have been a very worthy cause.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we
could have been seen as this amazing movement or moment, and it's pretty much the opposite. It's just a complete catastrophe.
Yeah,
and it's rightfully getting us and many others worried that, well, we fucked this up so much. Like, it just seems
we
that
can't agree.
We're not
aliens, they would kick our ass because we wouldn't be able to agree on anything to fight back,
or
be able to cooperate.
Yeah, or the less fun problems of climate change and nuclear weapons.
Right.
Yeah, we fucked this one up so bad. It's like, we're not. How are we going to deal with climate change? And we haven't been. It's been a long show too. But anyway.
Yeah, and and this is kind of speaks to the idea that it may be socially impossible because humans are too complex creatures, and it's hard to get everybody onto the same page. But
it might be if you're clear enough about the agenda. Like, it's so cliche to come back to this, but like in the war in Britain, the agenda was clear, and there was a lot of sacrifice, not just as far as people being in the military or concerned, but the whole
Britain Fascist Party pretty much shut up after that, didn't they?
No, they were incarcerated.
The war started.
No, Mosley was incarcerated for a time.
Okay.
Yeah,
for something specific, or for just being a Nazi sympathizer?
For being a fascist. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were just like, okay.
Churchill was like, and he not during the whole war. That I can't remember exactly what the reasoning was, but he was let out maybe around 1943 or something like that. But no, that level of subversion, like I don't, they weren't going around. It wasn't like the Japanese internment camps or like the communist scare in the 50s in the United States. They weren't going around trying to find everybody, but the big
Britain
name.
kind of came together, and there were. It's not like Winston Churchill was this mensch who was super popular even at the time. I don't think so. I mean, he's lionized in retrospect,
Mm-hmm.
and probably for good reason. But he had a lot of enemies, and a lot of people didn't like him at the time. But um, they were they seemed pretty united as far as winning the war or just surviving.
Yeah, on the social level, it's easy to get kind of romanticized about it, but there probably was, and I don't know enough about this aspect, but there was times like throughout the war when he didn't have as much certainty behind everybody, and it's not like it was unanimous support in by like May of 1940, June of 1940, like, and
You said
it's
there
not
was, or there wasn't.
like it wasn't like it wasn't like this unanimous support, and even like the June 1940 famous, probably the most famous speech of the 20th century, the Beaches speech, like that wasn't like, that's more incredible like after the fact. It wasn't like that huge. Well, at the time, I don't know what they would have published it, and there was no recording of it. Like the famous recording he recorded for posterity much later on, I think even in the 50s. But what I was getting at was like the agenda was clear. It was like, we're going to defend the empire no matter what, no, without any wavering, and the enemy is clear, and we're going to annihilate them. And so the agenda was clear, and it wasn't fuzzy. And with COVID, it's the exact opposite. Everything is riddled with wishy-washy dog shit and contradictions and cynical political action. Like there was nothing cynical.
Yeah.
Like Churchill, like say what you want about other stuff maybe he did earlier in his political career, but
yeah,
but during the war, it was like there was anything there like him going
he was
to war.
A single-minded bulldog.
Him going to war with Hitler. There was like nothing politically cynical about it. Like he was determined to save the country. And during COVID, like there's just been riddled with political cynicism, just blatant, for everybody to watch, some not to observe, for partisan reasons. If somebody who's on in their squad is doing something that's unwise, they might put the blinders on and then hyper focus when their foe is doing something blatantly ridiculous. But I think that's might be a core of the issue, how everybody's been so divided and how it's just been such a mess, is that there wasn't a clear agenda. And I don't know enough as to what went on in New Zealand, and I definitely know of people around internet land who didn't like Ardern's policies then and don't like Ardern's policies now, and don't like Ardern for a bunch of other reasons. People on the right and some people not on the right. But like she did very well in their election. So there, it wasn't that unpopular. Like that was, considering how many parties they have for a multi-party country with proportional representation.
Right.
For somebody to get 50% of the popular vote, like that just doesn't happen in Germany. And so for so there was quite a bit of a mandate for that, and there was quite a bit of
actual majority.
Yeah, she won an actual majority in a PR electoral parliament, which is insane.
Yeah.
And one might say, it's a lot easier to have that result, in iterations with a country with 4.6 million people or whatever. And maybe that is, I'm not sure how that kind of thing scales. I really don't. I haven't looked into that or thought about that enough. So maybe that's an argument. But when I just see, and it wasn't that I was like, me personally, I was supportive. Oh, considering like who we are, obviously I was supportive of Ardern's policy at the end of March or whenever it was in 2020. But I've never been, and there was a lot of things I didn't like about Ardern prior to that, and I've never been some Ardern sycophant. But I've seen a lot of people just like see her as this very this overly lofty figure, but she obviously has a lot of support in New Zealand, and I think how a lot of how it worked there is she was clear. It was like, we're going to contain this, and here's the agenda, here's the goal. It was really clear. There was clarity where I can't think of anywhere else where there was clarity. I think Merkel and Macron tried to have clarity in their rhetoric, but the clarity didn't coincide with the policy. And
she could tell her country shit that they didn't want to hear.
Jacinda?
Yeah.
Yeah. She was, and a lot of credit to her for that too.
Politicians, really are shy from doing that.
Yeah, well, Trump's sort of a different thing. He tells things that people don't want to hear. I don't think anybody wants to hear, and it isn't even really in reality. But
sometimes he says what he wants. The quiet part out loud, which is, refreshing.
Sometimes,
I understood, his that appeal.
And I think that can bring us back to
coming back around to what Trump did right. He had an initiative, or the White House rather had an initiative on rapid tests, like September of last year, of 2020, and it looked like they were pursuing that, and it really didn't come out to anything, unfortunately. I was really optimistic, and I don't know what killed it. I don't know. I looked it up, and I don't know why the rapid test program didn't take off. Whether it needed funding, couldn't get funding, there was logistical issues, there were legal issues. I don't know. I mean, legal issues never stopped Trump before. But I was like, yeah, go. I was like, go Trump. Let's roll out these rapid tests. It won't be the silver bullet, but it would be just another tool in our arsenal, something to weaken the enemy, so that other measures can be more effective, and you don't overwhelm the hospitals, and less people die, and a whole lot less people get injured, which we don't know whether it's permanent or not. The brain fog, the pains. Some people don't get their smell back.
And a lot of things. And then one thing that I think a lot of people have been on the fence about with Trump of doing right. I was leaning more in favor of him, and I'm pretty sure Woodward threw him a bone on this one. Was the shutting off, and of course it got him a lot of flack for, and he might have been wrong in this, but the way he was claimed in being wrong was complete fucking bullshit. And that was him shutting off from China, and of course from the crazies, him doing wrong, which if you're actually going to criticize his position, doing it in a stupid way then muddies the waters and makes the real argument difficult.
The idea was good.
Racist, blah blah blah, or something of that, which is just inane. But I thought that was a really big plus, and some people I've talked to weren't really sure that it really did anything, and that I'm off on that.
Well, I don't think it really did anything because it wasn't executed well. I think it could have. I mean, they banned Chinese nationals from coming here, but if you were a U.S. citizen, you could come back with not much more than a temperature check, and so it was going to get back.
it,
thousands of people flying
it was
in from China.
abrupt that he made the decision, but then the implementation was feeble.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know where on the chain that was broken. Ultimately the buck stops at the president, but
Mm-hmm.
there's probably lots of broken links in that chain that allowed that to happen because Trump didn't want to let a boat in, right? Because it would make the case numbers go up. And so, if someone had explained this to him, look, if if we're going to get Americans back, we got to isolate them, put them in a hotel or something like that. That would have been a much more reasonable move that could have, if not stopped it, delayed it, so we had more chance to prepare, or would have made it so it would, if we were better prepared, we could see it where it came out, and we could afford, to go like a New Zealand route, go for elimination, because if we had, really on the ball testing and contact tracing, we could have found those pockets, and some of them would get away, but you keep chasing them and chasing. He had a shot of doing it, completely eliminating it, I believe, in the beginning, because
Well,
it only
pretty much
takes.
everybody had a shot. And like back to New Zealand, like one thing that and everybody who's just in love with Ardern, and maybe I'm being too picky because she did take the most austere stance from the beginning, is she even waited too long. Like she could have did what she did a month earlier, and the writing was on the wall. Like this was the one initiative to do. It's it's to back to the a line Taleb had. I think the journal was pennies now or trillions later.
Right.
Take your pick. And like it was just an obvious thing to do. And that initial big lockdown that the Kiwis had would have been likely a
Yeah,
few
it
weeks
was hard
shorter.
and painful, but yeah,
Yeah,
it saved a
but if
whole
she would
lot
have
on the back end.
oh huge, but yeah, if she would have did earlier, that it might have been
Might have even been
equally
smaller.
painful but lesser in duration.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, for
It was, yeah.
so point being is that it was a solution that everybody had on the table, just nobody
Yeah, it
but
seemed like
Ardern really jumped
90% of
on
the
it.
criticism of Trump was this was racist, as opposed to, hey, your defense has tons of holes in it, and there's tons of possibly infected people. And they're just mixing it in with the community. Once it's out there,
Mm-hmm.
it's harder to fight. And somebody had to have
The
known
idea was right, but it was both too late and too little.
I don't know if it was too late.
Okay.
I just think it could have been executed. That I think you would either say nobody in who's been from China at all, or if you're from China, we no Chinese nationals, fine, but if you're an American, you come back from China, we still got to isolate you for a fortnight or for 3 weeks or whatever, because at the time you wouldn't really know the real infectious period. We thought it was around 2 weeks, but we didn't know for sure,
Mm-hmm.
right? And actually, I think the infectious period where you're really infectious is right around 10 days,
Okay.
but we didn't know at the time, so a month would have been fine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there are thousands of people coming back from China, but you could have stopped it there, or given it enough a delay that we'd be able to fight it better, to see
Mm-hmm.
it quicker. I mean, that and rapid tests, which rapid tests didn't come out until 6 months later, but nobody was talking about them, until like the summer of 2020. So yeah, I'm trying to think of things that Trump did right, and that was almost right. I think it had a chance to make a difference. I don't believe it did, but I liked the idea in principle, and Trump was very unfairly taken to task with his racism against Chinese people, or
Is the purported racism? Yeah.
yeah, and it's not like Trump is not racist, but this that's not what this is about, people. And I think many on the left knew that that's not what this is about, but it was just easy to take the shot at it, which was, in my opinion, dishonest, stupid, and counterproductive.
Yeah, I completely concur. There was a long time ago, Eric Weinstein pointed out to some degree. I'm not sure so much the Trump side, but yeah, you had Trump like early on, like well at first, and you know this is a big thing where you got it like, or I'm trying to figure out the chain of events, but there amidst the time when he was actually trying to do something, there was lots of periods of this is the flu, don't worry about it, blah blah
Right.
blah, and which just made things so much worse for everybody, and is a stain on his record that he's very well earned. But there was the period for what it's
Because he knew
worth.
better. He actually knew better,
Well,
at least
may, may,
according to Bob
may,
Woodward. He
oh
had,
yeah,
you know,
yeah,
pretty strong evidence that Trump knew how
oh yeah,
serious it was very early on, and and
yeah.
and he, deliberately lied to the American people. And I'm kind of flabbergasted that his fans aren't even just a little pissed at him for that. I mean, you can like him for whatever reason, but he did lie to your ass and say that this deadly plague was just the flu when he knew better. I'd figure at that point, lying about life or death,
Mm-hmm.
that comes to me. That comes before politics. I don't accept it when Obama does it. All right. Well, we're complaining about stuff that Trump did wrong. It's everybody else does that. That's
Right,
easy.
yeah,
Let's do the
that's
hard
the
stuff.
right. So there was points where he was really trying to do stuff, and early on, and it's always with not so much the left, but the Democrats, whenever it's whatever Trump's doing, do the opposite. So he's trying to do
Hydroxychloroquine. Yeah.
so he's trying to do stuff, and then you got, what was it, Pelosi and De Blasio are saying, don't not celebrate Chinese New Year, and we can't worry about all this because something racism, something, and
Oh, is this like after, like, in March or January, February?
yeah, January, February,
Okay.
and so yeah, it's not like there was this Trump's doing all this maniacal stuff, and that his enemies are just uh, giving the best advice possible. So there was times when his opponents were making much less sense than he was, even if what policies he was trying to implement were feeble, and in the end didn't really do a whole lot of anything. And then he followed it up with
Right.
the endless series of bizarre press conferences.
And the media was all saying, uh, it's just the flu. In the Atlantic, in the New York Times, there was tons of just the flu articles, and don't get your panties in a bunch. This is just another scare that the media wants you to be afraid. And even though the media just loves to criticize itself, they love to say the media does this and the media does that, as if they're outside of it. That's interesting, but it doesn't seem like they're able to take each other to task. Like in an ideal world, if one media outlet screws up, the other media outlets should jump on them, give them a bloody nose, and then let it go and move on.
That's already
Instead,
too. It's already too fractured. If they were
they
all
just
more or
attack
less.
each other for everything, whether it's worthwhile or not. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, whatever Trump said, the opposite must be true, or you have to do the opposite. And
Or Lord Savior Trump said this today.
hydroxychloroquine doesn't seem to work that well, but it could have. At the time, serious, people were looking at the issue.
Now, when he was trying to look into hydroxychloroquine, do you think it was like him genuinely trying to find extra things that we can do? And then, yeah, of course, a lot of the sliming was, this is a Trump thing, so it must be evil. And let's
I
throw
think he was
rotten
genuinely
cabbages
looking
at
at
it.
something, and one of his advisors mentioned it and said, we have this promising thing, and Trump just oversold it.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, Trump's big mistake was just, he oversells everything. But you really don't want to oversell a, a dangerous drug that may or may not work. We don't know, and we don't want people going out and taking it. Counter recommendation. You don't want to fuck around with drugs. So that's something that Trump definitely shouldn't have oversold. But people didn't. The criticism of him wasn't Trump. We don't know that. You can't say that. That's dangerous to say when we don't have much evidence either way. It was instead, hydroxychloroquine. Everybody was the left, or like the Democratic-ish establishment was
Mm-hmm.
looking all over for reasons why hydroxychloroquine definitely does not help with COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if we even found out definitively, other than just the test of time. It's a relatively inexpensive drug,
Mm-hmm.
and made in India. India had, did some big tests on it, and well, you don't hear about it. So if it was a miracle, they'd be, crowing about it. But it's just,
Somebody
Alex
would be
Jonesy.
crowing about it somewhere. Yeah.
It would be more than just the Alex Jonesy people.
Mm-hmm.
And which kind of takes us to ivermectin, which is more or less along the same vein.
Mm-hmm.
And but that's not a Trump thing. I don't think. Maybe Trump's mentioned ivermectin, but he didn't like.
No, that came onto the scene well after the end of his presidency, and and since then he just like pops out of the woodwork once in a while and has a big rally and talks about how Biden's a commie or something like that.
Yeah, I don't think Trump says anything about COVID at all, except maybe give himself credit for the vaccine, which
and 10,000 other things.
Which he deserves a little bit. He deserves enough credit for saying vaccine, good idea. That plan sounds good. Warp speed sounds good. Do that.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's some it's kind of like a duh thing that any person with half a brain would say, this sounds like a good idea, let's do it.
Mm-hmm.
But
well, except Kamala Harris at the time.
Oh yeah.
Well, that was what I was alluding to before.
Where she was doubting the drug,
where she was criticizing Operation
like,
Warp Speed and the vaccines, and
that this has never been done before. This is
like it's too fast, and I wouldn't want to take this vaccine,
right,
and all that nonsense.
Yeah,
but yeah, so like with hydroxychloroquine, like my concern was at the time, and this, and I'm the eternal pessimist, and I just see so much cynicism in politicians. I thought it was maybe he was trying to grasp at it a bit more because he was trying to find other things to throw at it that weren't public health measures, because it didn't take long until he was like battling with Democratic governors over non-medical interventions. So I think he was trying to find see, look at you and your stupid stay-at-home orders and restaurant closures. I have magic drug. And
okay. Yeah.
So but there's nothing to substantiate my claim. It could have been he was sincerely thought he overheard like this drug might do something. Hey, super drug, go super drug.
Right.
Yeah, and it could have just been within the more like childish, optimistic part of his mind and just would have gone with it. So it could have been sincere conviction on his part to try to get hydroxychloroquine going and see what it could do and not give up on it. But yeah, what else did so the summer was a hot mess with Trump. Besides, you point out the mask thing. I probably would have forgot about that if you didn't bring it up. And yeah, that well, although like from CNN land, it's not like he's going to get a lot of fucking credit there. But there was that. I'm struggling to think of anything else.
Yeah, I'm out.
Okay, so that's that. So that was actually a pretty good list of things that he did right, just the pandemic. But yeah, then the bigger point, we're finally
Or at
getting
least
to
didn't do wrong, or didn't do wrong in the way that
didn't fuck up to was trying. He was trying just not to be like just a shit sack.
I give our politicians credit for trying, even if it doesn't succeed, because
when they do try, yeah,
you've got lots of unknowns, and even there's tons of good plans that don't work for whatever stupid reason, but they're otherwise good plans, and 900 out of 1,000 would work.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes you roll a snake eyes.
Yep, yeah. So then to the bigger picture that you're trying to get at was so we'll go over like what are then some of the other things throughout all of Trump time that he
other things that Trump
right.
did right. Yeah, there's a lot. We discussed the kayfabe and how Trump he intuitively understood the political kayfabe.
Mm-hmm.
And
for anybody who doesn't know what kayfabe is, which would probably be almost everybody listening, I would think
listen to Weinstein
or watch wrestling, is that kayfabe is the system that wrestling uses to make you think that this false drama is real, and so everything that's within kayfabe is this drama, and for decades until the internet.
And there are rules.
There's many rules
and
a full dictionary of lingo and everything. Yeah. There's rules. There's a system. There's like back in the day in like there was a time there's one point when the Iron Sheik and Hacksaw Jim Duggan, like Duggan was a face, good guy, and then Sheik was a heel, bad guy. Right. And like they were driving around together, which they weren't supposed to. Like they took it to such the extreme.
They're supposed to be enemies.
Yeah, so like they were supposed to not be seen together, and heels and faces would travel together. But they were friends and they were traveling together.
Yeah.
But then they got pulled over, and like Sheik would have had a bunch of blow on them or something, and so then that would have gotten the press, and they got in huge trouble like within wrestling land because just for that, like
they got in trouble for being caught together in a car together or something.
Way bigger issue that was the way bigger issue than Sheik having blow and them getting like pulled over and all that. Anyway, so kayfabe is the system of deception used to make the work, and work is wrestling code for performance, acting,
to make it compelling drama,
to make the work look like a shoot, in which a shoot is just like an actual fight. And sometimes the works break out into shoots. So when there's a match going on and people shoot, that's when actually like somebody's getting pissed at the other guy, and actually shit gets real. So within politics and media, Weinstein had and he has a little piece written on this about kayfabe used more abroad as a system of deception. And to understand kayfabe within the confines of professional wrestling, you can understand the other actual kayfabes going on. And so Trump, not only is he like this wrestling like figure, and he was in the WWE, as most people know. There was the battle
Yeah.
of the billionaires
Yeah.
shtick where him and Vince were, and like Trump was actually like the face at that point, like because Vince is always a bad
Right.
guy. So Trump was the good guy. He was like this other billionaire, like rich Northeast guy who came in and to stick it to Vince, and then they had like their own two respective wrestlers, and whoever lost
a chance to be a badass, and
and whoever guys lost the match, then the other guy had to get his head shaved, and so Vince ended up getting his head shaved, and so there was, I can't remember what happened, but at some point Austin had to give Trump a stunner, and it's crazy to think that one of the presidents of the United States was in wrestling stuff, and like there's videos of him getting a stunner from Steve Austin and all that. But yeah, so he's actually in that, and then even if anybody didn't know that, he has this wrestling like persona to him, and going into the kayfabe of the American political system, he was able to just utilize it and twist it. And so this is something
saw
that
the Matrix for what it was.
Absolutely, and he knew the code.
He did. He could bend the universe.
Yeah, he was like Neo.
Yeah, to the reality distortion field.
And so it's something that he did right, like right in the sense that it's something where he had like a high degree of accomplishment, and even good in the sense that for all the ills that followed his election win, there is that silver lining of how much he exposed, how much he revealed Oz from behind the curtain, and pointed out the emperor having no clothes by just showing, by able to just step in and say, this is a show and it's my show now.
And he had more experience with that kind of showbiz.
Mm-hmm.
Like with pros at it, and for some reason our politicians weren't really good at the whole show business, even though that was their game. It still felt like they phoned it in, especially Hillary Clinton. I didn't sense any sort of passion out of her. Everything she said, felt like it was sterilized and filtered through focus group work, and she sounded like a second-rate actor,
Mm-hmm.
Playing what she thought was supposed to be a politician,
Mm-hmm.
and doing it badly.
Mm-hmm.
And it just kind of seemed like it's her turn. Actually, I think that was a popular slogan among some.
It's her time or something like that.
Team Clinton.
Yeah, it's her turn or her time or something like that.
I remember her turn. I could be wrong.
Her turn. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, as if it were preordained that Hillary should become,
which kind of was.
And from what we revealed, or what was revealed in WikiLeaks,
mm-hmm.
that's someone else who got thrown under the bus for not saying nice things about Hillary. And Julian Assange was a hero of the left, oftentimes, or at least a hero of the anti-authoritarians,
mm-hmm.
which are both on the right and the left. And it looks like the right is very much going on the anti-authoritarian train, which that aspect of the rebellion I'm okay with, because I don't like authoritarians either.
Mm-hmm.
But what was I? I forget.
I think we just sort of got off. But as another side note, just when you brought up Assange, and then we'll try to think. Yeah. Well, we'll try to think of some other Trump things that he got right. But I read today that recently, so not when he was in office, but sort of an interesting turn from when his boss Trump was praising Assange. Pompeo said that Assange should be what was he saying now? Yeah, that he should be, you know, arrested to some degree for what he's done and all that, which I found was interesting. I thought he would have
That he was
people,
able to contradict Trump like that
yeah,
and get away with it.
yeah, and I just figured that people who were so much like Pompeo was like, you know, well, that's why he was, you know, he went from being just some obscure congressman to the NSA to the Secretary of State,
Yeah.
and he's just like a just fat nincompoop. And a big thing was he just like stayed by Trump's side, and you did well if you were just, you know, a brown noser, not based so much on your
Well,
competency.
I think maybe he got to Trump then, because Trump, had no interest in
Or maybe Pompeo was trying
dropping
to
the
appeal,
charges against him. You know,
or maybe Pompeo was like trying to find. He's trying to, maybe he thinks that the Trump wagon's going to leave, and he wants to make impression with the David Frums of the world, and you know that's
right,
where he's trying to
sure,
go. You know,
yeah, because they're never gonna like Julian. And
no, that
Trump had I don't know why Trump didn't, give clemency or he he could just shoot him up a pardon. All people that should have pardoned, and Assange helped him.
yeah, and he
I
wasn't
don't know why.
exactly he wasn't light on handing out the pardons, you know, and
Right.
he was handing out a lot, and not
So it
just to
seems
people
like
like not
somebody
just
in his group got to him and
yeah.
somehow managed to convince him that Julian is the bad guy, or it will bite him in the ass maybe if he does it.
That's probably it, because I don't think it's because you know Trump was in love with Assange for a while. I love WikiLeaks, you know,
Right.
those famous rants. But it's there's nothing to designate that Julian Assange has any passion for Donald Trump. So that's probably what it is that you know Assange was useful for them for that moment, but it's like, oh, here's somebody who, if they had the chance, would not have any qualms about releasing dirt
Oh,
on
right. Yeah.
Trumplandia.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's probably a very good
So
reason.
yeah,
Okay, he helped us with
yeah.
screwing over Hillary, but yeah, but you know they're
There's
like,
no more use to him. Yeah.
but yeah,
It's only
they're like
danger.
mobsters. It's like shooting the hitman.
Right.
Okay,
Uh,
what else did Trump do?
um, are we done with the kayfabe aspect of it?
We don't
Because
have to be.
I think that rabbit hole goes a whole lot deeper.
Oh, it does. I was just want to share. I can dwell on that. Like another aspect of the Trump kayfabe, I'm not sure how important it is, but I find interesting is, and maybe there is something to that, is you know just sort of the character that he played. And we were talking about this the other day. Uh, was that he came in as just not the hero. He was the heel who was over in the sense that you know he was playing a bad guy, but then got over with a whole large set of a
Right.
you know audience, if you want to put it that way.
He
Which was,
got some underdog appeal, and
he
the
was like the bad,
face
yeah, he was the bad
was
guy who was cool. You know,
yeah,
he wasn't
and
playing. Yeah, he was the exact opposite of somebody like Bush one. You know, Bush
okay,
one
right,
was like
stiff and
was like the he was sort of like how they portrayed him in The Simpsons. He's like the kind of guy that Flanders would want as a neighbor. You know,
yeah,
that's what Bush one was like.
yeah. You could do worse, right?
You know, even though I'm not a fan of Bush one, that's you know how he
He would
was.
probably be a decent neighbor. I'd
He
just
probably, yeah, he probably actually would
he'd
be a
mow
pretty.
his lawn,
He would have been a good name.
or
He would have mowed.
he'd have someone mow his lawn.
Yeah, yeah. He'd lend you ladders and stuff. And
Yeah,
yeah. He'd probably be a pretty nice guy. You know, he'd be clean. But yeah, he had this really shiny, polished image as this you know respected uh, father figure, sort of individual. You know, the respectable American. And it was sort of the Bush one image, whereas Trump was just this slobbish, boorish, fat buffoon who's picking fights with people, and it's just the complete opposite. But then that got over, and with much of the same crowd, and
Yeah.
so and it parallels with some other things that go on with like the kayfabe of wrestling, where that eventually did become a thing, and not by any
Where the
design.
bad guy becomes the favorite.
Yeah,
And
that would happen initially with the Undertaker and Stone Cold Steve Austin, and then
right,
some other people following that,
right.
where they're bad guys and they just get over, and they don't change their character. Like the one guy is like with Austin, he's this beer drinking badass who will just turn around and fuck anybody over, and it doesn't follow the rules. And then the Undertaker's like this spooky demon thing, and but they're both the crowd is just adores them and is just in love with them. And so that's nobody had ever done that within any of the like the real world kayfabes. And like Trump just came in and just was able to accomplish that with the bang. And it was just interesting
Yeah.
to observe that as a parallel with wrestling kayfabe, with like that if it's any importance at all. But that was his delivery, and which also worked.
I still don't. Yeah, I get what you're saying, and it's like, yeah, he could see the walls of the Matrix, or the walls of the holodeck, rather.
Mm.
But even though he could see them and he could maneuver in them, I still don't understand how he does it, how he did it, how he completely annihilated every other contender in the Republican Party, just systematically. Lion Ted, Little Marco, none of them had a chance. It was the craziest thing. And then, um, and
Well, some of
then
them
he
he
just
just
turned it
like
around.
it's like some of them he just like Cruz held up for a while, but it was clear that Trump had won well before Cruz gave up. Long time before, like Cruz had
Right? Yeah,
he
yeah.
he he
Cruz held on for like a month
he was
after it was pretty.
it was done. But yeah, but some people he just decimated who you wouldn't have imagined that he would have, like Jeb Bush, just
Yeah.
obliterated him. But yeah, he came in. But even like watching that with all these other different people compared to when it was just him and Hillary, like he was. It,
He would obliterate either George Bush.
oh, he would have.
Pretty
Yeah.
sure.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Oh, definitely.
He would
But
obliterate Ronald Reagan, I think. If you had a Ronnie Reagan type up there.
yeah,
Ronnie
I,
had a he had his own penchant for show business. He
it
worked in
was an
it for a
actor.
long time.
Well, it depends.
Nixon wouldn't survive,
Yeah,
right?
no. But Trump was also like a product of the time. It was just like the dismal state of things, and how abhorrent the two parties have gone. Not that they were all that wonderful back in the 70s, but a lot of it, like I would have to think about it. I can't really give an answer. Like if we're going as far back as Reagan, which was well before I was alive, um, that he would have done so well, not just in conjunction with who he's up against, but with the circumstances of the time. And so just a lot of disenfranchisement in the United States with where Trump won, with the ongoing military conflicts abroad, and still so many people feeling so much from the calamities of the financial crisis, and then just seeing these blatantly corrupt political entities.
Someone just throw rocks at them all.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But with watching Trump when there was early in the primaries, when there was still the huge cast of characters,
Yeah.
it's like he was completely different than everybody up there,
Right.
and he ruined all their gigs. Like they were like, back to something we were saying like earlier, when before in elections, American elections, like even within the the real world kayfabe, just like within wrestling kayfabe, there's unwritten rules. There's rules that you follow, and so you would have like the Republican and the Democrat vying for the presidency, and they're wanting to defeat the other for obvious reasons, for so that they can become the president and also gain a victory for their party. There's certain lines that they still won't cross. It's just like if you don't cross it, it's if neither defects, then we're all good. And so
Right.
and everybody keeps following that rule, and so then nobody ever defects.
Right.
And
Because they know it's a iterative game. You're going to have more games in the future.
yeah, and so then that just kept playing over and over, where there's certain lines you don't cross, and you put on a performance and I'll put on a performance, and may the best performer win. And Trump just came in and
On instinct
threw the table up in the air, and nobody knew what to do. It like just seemed like everybody was shocked and they couldn't come back. You just destroyed everybody, and like even somebody who was already an outsider and wasn't completely playing the game, Rand Paul,
right.
like he just, in comparison to Trump, he just looked like the rest of them. And so like his outsiderism was marginal compared to Trump. Maybe if his father was there, it might have been different. But instead of him, he just came in like a wrecking ball and just broke all the rules of the game and then made the game his. And he did that with the Republican primary and then the with the actual general election.
Yeah, it's amazing how there's some people who have that certain quality of personality, being able to just force getting what they want. Helps to be a billionaire, but
Yeah, if he is one, we don't know.
it often happens with people who are used to getting what they want. It sort of perpetuates itself. It's the fake it till. But I think I'm just scratching the surface as to the genius there, and I call it genius because Trump was able to do what very, very, very few people can do.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think I think it's more like savant genius, but I I will do a tip of the hat to Mr. Trump. You are absolutely fabulous at the kayfabe, and you came in and knew how to play the game better than the people who've been playing that game. Nice. Just by instinct, just off the cuff, being in it the whole time, and that was an advantage. Nothing was focus group tested. Nothing was even thought about that deeply. Just would go stream of consciousness. I think, yeah, people really respected that.
Well, some things were planned. Some things were planned. I'm not sure which sort of like actual plans Roger Stone had, with his involvement in the campaign, but there was a few things like coordinated with Bannon. Bannon had some particular ideas, and they weren't like focus group tested. They were Bannon brain tested. Like they were just within the purview of Bannon's ideology. But Bannon had it wasn't.
He saw it right away
because of Bannon, and I think that was one thing. And this is something I mentioned before. A lot of people try to prescribe, one thing that's shifted election. There's always a bunch of things, but I think that was one thing that didn't help Trump in the past election was he didn't have Steve Bannon, and and some of Steve Bannon's ideas, which he made sure became components of the Trump campaign, worked. And
Steve Bannon is a straight up brilliant individual. Not a big fan.
I don't exactly have a Bannon poster on my wall. We're so going to get canceled. We have to make sure we're not supporting Steve Bannon on this program.
but Bannon is undeniably couple Sigma, brilliant individual, strategic.
Did you ever watch?
I think he went to Naval War College. He worked for Goldman Sachs. And I've never met any idiot from Goldman Sachs ever.
Did you watch the
Harvard, but never. Goldman Sachs. Go ahead.
Yeah. Did you watch the Monk debate between David
Yes,
Frum
with
and
him
Steve
and Frum.
and Steve
Yeah,
Bannon?
yeah.
Like that too. Like Bannon, he held his ground. He held his ground really strong, and like the debate was a tie at the end. They miscalculated it, and they actually said
Yeah,
Bannon
I don't know
won.
who won.
No, they tied. It was the only tie in the
Only
history
tie.
of
Oh,
Monk
holy shit.
debates.
Okay.
But at first, like I don't know how that happened. I don't know that they have an error because it's all in audience voting, and they do it in Massey
just
now with like elect,
thought.
or I think they do with phones or something now. I think they used to have
Yeah.
little things that you'd have to
I
use.
thought that they had like devices under your seat.
Can't remember what they
And
do.
then
I
after
think
the debate, they just say, come out and say, all right, do this and this if you felt so and so.
well they used to have them like, but I think now they don't need them, and you just like log into something with your phone, and they give you like some time, and then
Yeah.
you click on who you vote for.
But Bannon was persuasive.
Well, yeah, okay.
I think
yeah.
he was persuasive in the sense that he was persuasive to me in the sense that he framed everything as left populism versus right populism. Either way, it's going to be populism. He would probably be surprised that Bernie didn't get the nomination, but I don't know. I haven't watched his show lately. I did
For whatever reason,
interestingly, in the beginning of COVID, like around February, March, Bannon was he had some great ideas. He was a hawk. He was and he was using military terms as well. He was like, bring the hammer down and go at this thing really hard with overwhelming force and fight the spread with everything you got. Because it's going to be pennies now or pounds later.
Mm-hmm.
That was how he felt about it, and he wasn't in Trump's inner circle at the time. That was just him being interviewed by somebody. You can find the video on YouTube, and he understood what COVID was pretty early on.
Mm-hmm.
It had a pretty firm grasp of it. But I'm pretty sure he's, turned that around. Or I mean, he's not talking like that now. His show is called like Pandemic Live or something. I mean, it's. I think it's got like COVID or pandemic in the title.
We're in direct competition with Steve Bannon.
We are. Yeah. So
we're coming for you, Bannon. We're taking your audience.
We got a beef. We got a beef, Steve. and you could be the face. I bet you never heard that before. But you get to be the face this time, and we'll
That's
be
right.
the heels.
We're coming for you.
Yeah.
Listen here, Bannon.
But yeah, Trump didn't have Bannon as a close ally, and was probably much to his detriment.
Yeah, well, I think so, and I think that was a flaw with Trump, is that there wasn't ever those sort of shrewd calculations over the long term. Like lots of times you get people into his circle because he would say, I could use you, so I'm going to be really nice to you. I'm going to bring you in, but he wouldn't be able to keep doing that. If somebody would piss him off, and he would just say, he would never be able to say, just got to swallow this one. This guy is helping me. They'd have an argument with somebody, and then it would be this big dramatic thing, and then they'd go out the door, and then he'd talk shit about him in public. It's like, what did he call him? Like Crazy Steve, or what nickname? What wrestling name did he come up with for Steve Bannon? It was like,
did he?
Yeah, he did. After him and Bannon had the falling out, he came up. He was shitting on Bannon for a while in public, and he came up with, just like everybody else, he came up with, I think it was Crazy Steve. They don't always have to, rhyme or have a good flow. It was sort of like Crooked Hillary. But I think it was Crazy Steve Bannon or something like that. But yeah, that was definitely something that didn't help Trump in that the last election. But and the everything that went wrong with COVID, that didn't help him either. But it's not clear that he's not going to utilize the same thing again. And I think people were too quick to breathe a sigh of relief and say that, the circus has left town. You know,
in,
in,
the sense that
his strategy from before of breaking the act can still work, and he can make a comeback in the next election and win again. And that really bold strategy, no matter however cognizant he is of what he's actually doing, worked for him to an extreme degree, and we may have not seen the end of it.
right, but it sounded like you're saying it'd be hard to pull off that same feat twice because he's already done it.
No, oh no, maybe I did sound like I was saying that. I wasn't. I'm not sure. I don't think it would be, because he did sort of just sort of change the rules and the drama, or even sort of break the fourth wall, but it's not completely destroyed, and he has lost some grip on it. Of course, there was a concerted effort to do so, and so he can. I think he could do that again, and it would definitely be helpful for him if he had, some of the, particularly Bannon, some of those helpful components with him, along the way.
Especially if it's Kamala, if he's going against Kamala.
Yeah. I think we talked about this before, and it just seems impossible that the Democrats, well, God, they've been so naive at times. Like, maybe they would just go with it, be like, well, Kamala's, she's anointed, she's one of the top insiders, she's one of the
right,
she's one of the allowed, so maybe they won't even look at it that strategically like they did with Hillary, and just do it all over again. And a lot of Biden, like,
same
after
thing with Biden. I mean, he was just he was on deck.
Oh, and he barely won. That's a lot of thing that people are so confused about. Like, was this grand victory? Like, you guys, you guys barely defeated this megalomaniac demagogue after he just shit the bed on this pandemic, and you guys barely beat him. And the guy that you got and the guy that you guys got to run this operation is this corrupt kleptocrat who's been a career politician for half a century, and is clearly, his marbles are on the way out the door.
Yeah. So this was the best you could find.
Yeah. So considering that, it bodes well for Trump in the future, if he so chooses to do so, or if he doesn't die of a Big Mac.
Right.
Yeah.
It looks like the Democratic establishment's just going to present him another soft target. I think Bernie could have done better against Trump. Maybe I'm wrong, but Bernie is I think, as Bannon would put it, the lefty populist. And is willing to say things, outside of the orthodoxy that the party can't stand. So back to shit that Trump got right. Oh, go ahead.
Just one side note on Bernie, and I've never decided on it. My idea was also that Bernie could have beat him, but just so then the counter argument, from the Atlantic, that crowd, the people who are quite favorable to the Joe Bidens and Clintons of the world, would have seen it that, well, Bernie couldn't have won. How could have this socialist, which is always a funny way how they always frame it, as if he's some radical, could have.
And I think Bernie managed to take some of the sting out of that by saying, "Yeah, I'm a socialist.
Yeah,
this is what I believe.
Yeah,
I got beliefs. What do you know?"
Yeah, and then if you look back at it, in Zizek has pointed this out time and time again, and it's so obvious. It's like, whenever somebody tries to paint Sanders as this radical, like he's been like a standard, like run of the mill, completely non-radical social democrat who's been perfectly acceptable in all of Western Europe for decades and decades and
Right.
decades and decades. And the idea of him a
No, he
radical.
hasn't changed a bit. The world came to him. The country came to him.
Yeah. But with so the idea is that, well, like, middle America
Yeah.
and purple voters, like, there's no way they could
Yeah.
have voted for this
Some of
this
Trump voters, I
th-
think, would have come
this
to him.
this rat. Well, the thing is that people were disenfranchised, and it would have been a big move for the left to have somebody who's actually viable, and and they would have said the same thing if, for whatever, let's say like Trump got hit by a train, early on in the Republican primaries. Well, Trump is this fat, crazy XYZ. He would have never beaten Hillary Clinton. That's what the story would have been if Trump would have choked on chicken McNuggets or something, forgot to dip them in the barbecue sauce, sometime in March of 2016, or yeah, and never would have made it far down the primaries if somebody would have tried to done the counterfactual. They would have thought, well, Trump wouldn't have won, even like weeks before the election. It's like, Hillary's got this in the bag. So they just spin whatever they want, and there were people who were just pissed off and wanted to flip the bird to the whole shebang and supported young people who supported Sanders. I don't know how big this crowd was. It could have been a very small amount of people, but there were people that said, fuck you.
Right.
I wanted Bernie. I'm going to vote
excited.
I'm going to vote for this.
Yeah,
I'm going to vote for this. I'm going to vote for this weird thing that you people hate.
Yeah.
Screw you. And so it's, and you have the votes that matter are, not your state, but a lot of people who are really close to you, just to the north of you and to the east of you. It's not some yuppie in Brooklyn or Seattle that matters. It's the people in, Pennsylvania, and it's the mechanics and the the accountants and the cooks in
people
Pennsylvania.
Who work for a living.
Yeah, it's people who work for a living, who are regular people in Ohio and Michigan and Pennsylvania. These are the people who are deciding who's going to become president.
Yeah.
And
I think they all feel in some way, and they may have different stories or different ways of explaining it, but feel like the last 30 years was a ripoff somehow,
or even the last 20.
Yeah.
And so I think it is just a lot of people trying to spin what you're supposed to say, and to protect the in group. But yeah, it's not clear that Sanders wouldn't have wiped the floor with, or not wiped the floor, won whatever way against Trump or any Republican. I think people wanted something different, and that was a big thing that also appealed with Trump, along with what he accomplished with his kayfabe and sort of the Machiavellian decisions made with Bannon.
Yeah, and I don't know if anybody. I think Trump is inimitable in the sense that his kids aren't going to be able to pull off what he does. I know his son, the older son.
Oh, the oldest, that Don Jr.
Yeah, Don Jr.
Oh, he won't succeed him. He
wants so bad to be like his dad, and he's just not.
You feel so bad for him. He's just there's somebody who just will be nothing forever. Well, I don't think any of them. Like, once if Trump dies tomorrow, from McDonald's, then I think that's it. Like, there's no, from the family, like not like Ivanka was the one that he allowed to actually do things. Like, that's obviously like the favorite child. And but she doesn't. She was just there because Trump likes her, and so that's it. He was just the favorite kid, but she doesn't have anything that would
I
be
don't
able.
think she's got political ambition.
No, even if she did, she doesn't have any ability to accomplish anything the way she is. So, none of
I
them
haven't
do.
seen any of it yet. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Like if when Trump dies, what will it all die, or will
Who
because
could
you
pick
see.
up that mantle?
Well, you see, other people were trying besides
They're
Don
trying
Jr.
so
Like
hard.
DeSantis is the big one, obviously,
Yeah.
and there's a lot that he's done to try to be Trumpian, but it's you have to have all the dark magic of Trump to pull it off, and I don't know. Will it just be a lot more of these lesser sort of characters who just keep on the same ideology with protectionism and jingoism and all of that, but just not quite be up to snuff of the type of
I have a
character that
feeling
Trump was.
the protectionism part is probably here to stay.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a part of Trump that I originally disagreed with. Um, and because I was a good little liberal, believed in comparative advantage and free trade and all that. And I still do to a point. But when Trump said China was eating our lunch, he wasn't entirely wrong. There was plenty of truth to that. And sometimes when you listen to somebody who you disagree with fervently about a lot of things, take a step back and say, okay, imagine this person really believes this, what they're saying is true, and try to imagine what exactly could what they're saying be true of, and look for some sort of facet, element, aspect of what they're talking about, where the truth actually lies, or what uh, motivates them to say what they say. China was not stealing our intellectual property, but more or less buying it out from under us, and just acquiring companies and uh, acquiring technologies with it. And um, they would frequently dump on us. They dumped tires on us not too long ago. And maybe it's not such a good idea to offshore everything. And Trump was onto something there. He wanted to bring the jobs back. He wanted to bring the manufacturing jobs back. And the neoliberals, the left and the right, told him, no, those jobs are not coming back ever. It's just not economical to do that. It's better this way. And you get cheap televisions. That's great. But the other side of it is you don't have your consumer population is shrinking, and that's not good for the economy.
And until Trump, the only more notable, unless I'm missing somebody, American political figure on the big stage who had these sorts of positions of not being fond of free trade and worrying about internal American labor interest would have been Sanders.
Yeah.
And maybe actually, I can't remember. Maybe Kucinich probably would have had some of those positions as well, but he's been out of the game for a long time now.
Yeah, I don't know why.
Yeah, he's up there.
Yeah,
I guess being 1,000 years old is the new 40 now.
Is he really? Is he like 70, 80?
Dennis Kucinich? Yeah, he's got to be. I'm guessing he'd be about 80 now, I would think. But yeah, anyway, like that was like
could have been a Dennis Kucinich moment just as much as Bernie.
Yeah, and that was a left position. A lot of other places was being opposed to free trade and worrying about domestic labor.
Yeah. Because, yeah, the Democrats saw what happened to Mondale, and they're like, "Oh, we're never going to go that way again." So we get we get Bill Clinton, who is
Oh, Mondale and McGovern.
and well, I I don't know a whole lot about the McGovern race. Just that, yeah, I don't know much about McGovern at all. But Mondale was sticking to a very traditional Democrat left policy of the post-war era, which was, strong on labor unions. Labor unions are your voting base.
Mm-hmm.
You cater to them.
Oh well, McGovern was even more so. He was very left reformist. So he was, he was pretty. He would have been the closest thing to Sanders. Yeah. Anyway.
And but maybe he was like trying to bring about a healthcare plan.
I can't. Yeah, I don't know enough about that. But he was sort of like the more leftward person who managed to get in there, and then there just wasn't much confidence in the agenda.
I didn't think Mondale was really that left. He was just the traditional where the left was at that time, mm-hmm. which was very pro-union and a pro targeted protectionism.
Yeah. Okay. Gotcha.
Let's protect the union's industries. So you had interests aligned there, and I think after Mondale got creamed, that the Democratic Party just made a big shift. They became pro free trade. And,
can't beat them, join them.
And they believed that if they could get the money, they could buy the votes. Mm-hmm. That they didn't need to be beholden to labor unions. And labor unions were on the way out anyway. Post 70s. They weren't the massive voting bloc that they were for the first half of the 20th century. And so they went to the bankers, the neolibs, the privatize, deregulate, integrate, offshore, and we'll make money on the come somehow. And we did. I mean, it was a whole lot more efficient. Just the money we made wasn't evenly distributed by any stretch. So it looks like the Democrats are pivoting back to, or both parties are pivoting away from globalism. They're both trying to outdo each other on how tough they are on China. It's no longer an issue. Is China the not enemy but a rival, a competitor?
Mm-hmm.
That part is accepted and unsaid. It's just how to go about it. Who's more racist than who? Right. And Trump was early to that, because there were very few people. I mean, and that was never ever a Republican platform. I don't think ever in the history of the universe were the Republicans ever protectionist.
Oh, are you sure about that? Like
in the 19th century.
Well, here that was the case. There's sort of an idea of like the flip, but there's been lots of times within the Anglosphere where like the right position is much more protectionist. I think it's quite novel. I think this is more of like a starting in the 60s, and then it became like unarguable doctrine at the end of the 70s that that's the case, where the right is sort of synonymous with
So
with neoliberalism, and
it was
just
like
basically,
Milton Friedman like convinced
yeah, I
the
think
party
a
that
lot, and yeah, a lot of it came along with Friedman, and then it just there's no turning back after Thatcher and Reagan. But I guess I just don't know enough. But
no, you could
I
be right.
but I think
It's
in the U.S. that earlier in the 20th century, that there would have been the economic position might have looked a lot more inward, and here, like up until like neoliberalism became so chic, the right was, or the Tories, I should say, were more in line with more of paternalistic and some degree of protectionistic conservatism, and the liberals were liberal, as the name would imply.
in a Adam
Yeah.
Smith sense.
Yeah, not like
Ricardo. Yeah.
Yeah, right, and as well as more so in the social sense, like the Tories too would be a little more socially conservative, and the liberals would be a little less so, or a little more so, or less so.
So yeah, for all we know, it could have been. Oh, for all I know, it could have just been that 50 years.
But anyway, we don't have to go back decade, half centuries and centuries, for
So I mean, it's
for our lifetimes. That has been the inarguable Republican position, and to an extreme, and then so just to shift that way,
and they won. They actually won that debate and got the Democrats to on their on that side of the issue, and it was just who was more free trade than the next guy, and that just fell by the wayside. But the Republicans were the first to flip around on that.
Yeah, and it's all happened so fast, and would have
It happened, yeah. And there's not much resistance. You've got the Lincolnites, Lincoln Republicans, that whatever they call.
what do they call? What the fuck they call it? The Lincoln
the Trumpers.
Yeah.
And they pretty much stick to the old orthodoxy, but the party and their constituency as a whole, I think, away from and but the Democrats are just following. We're like, oh, it's supposed to say China bad. So China bad. I don't know if they're really seeing if they got a strategy much more sophisticated. So okay, back to shit Trump was right about, globalism or anti-globalism, or the winding back of globalism as a whole. NATO. Uh, he was. I mean, we've been in.
You're gonna have to speak a lot more on that one, because like being there, like just sort of judge like the. It's harder from my vantage point to judge like the feelings of your compatriots for their. Because that one I found surprising. I thought it was more just like you'd maybe have some people who were just very anti-militarism on the left, who just see anything like NATO as shitty. But like I was surprised to see how many people were going along with Trump's ire towards NATO when that popped up. And so just go on about that, like how
the left,
like how that sentiment was appealing to such a broad array of the public.
Yeah, the left liked NATO more because Trump was against it, or because Trump, was less interested in it. He kind of took the attitude of, you need us more than we need you, and you need to pay up, as far as military spending, etc.
Yeah, yeah, I got all that, but like, how did it take off? Like, how did so many people find that position appealing?
I think it was a thing running for a long time that lots of politicians paid lip service to, but none of them did anything about. And maybe they had good reason. Maybe their advisor had, were like, you know, further down the line, there's plenty of unintended consequences if we let the NATO scheme break up. That could be a wild card. Lots of crazy shit can happen that hasn't happened in 80 years. You know, Europe has been at peace for 80 years. I mean, that's quite an accomplishment, and we don't want to screw that up. But at the same time, NATO was created uh, for in a bygone era against a bygone superpower that no longer exists. And so, I mean, the reason for NATO, there's not much reason to justify NATO in its current state. Same thing goes with the U.S. Patrolling the seas for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
We had interest in doing that before because we could say, just help us fight the Soviets, or be our buffer against the Soviets, or let us put missiles in your country, or whatever. Just be on our side versus their side, zero sum, and we'll let you trade with anybody else in the world. And you don't have to have raw materials. You don't have to have natural resources. You just have to be willing to play ball with us and you know, modernize, industrialize.
Mm-hmm.
And we had massive prosperity because of that. But I think that was like a byproduct. This was the regime that we created to box the Soviets in. And even, making nice with China 50 years ago, which, I don't know if Nixon was the breakthrough there, but after Nixon, it was pretty much accepted. And we were going to play ball with China, and China wasn't the boogeyman that the Soviet Union was. Maybe it's because they were weaker.
Oh, they were substantially weaker. It wasn't even
Yeah.
comparable in any way.
So
And yeah, Nixon and Kissinger were
they were
completely
less of a
the breakthrough of
they weren't so
for
much
sure.
of a threat like
They weren't a threat at all.
Soviet
Right.
bombers and missiles, and thousands of tanks just kind of rushing across Europe.
Mm-hmm.
Worried about that. But so do we have a reason for NATO now? I think someone could make a case for it, but it's not really readily apparent.
Mm-hmm.
We've been, no wonder Russia is so paranoid, because we've been expanding NATO to their front door. And so, yeah, I mean, Russia gets invaded every once in a while, and they're, really sensitive about that northern
The whole
European
invasion
flank,
thing.
which is just undefendable unless you got
Oh, they've proved
big
that it's
white
very
bubble.
defendable.
Well, defendable, kinda. I mean, if you're getting beat up all the way to capital city and being saved by Old Man Winter.
But yeah, that's what they rely on. Old man winter.
Yeah.
No, you're right. In like another World War II counterfactual, like a big thing that helped Stalin in 1941 was is that there was so many delays in Barbarossa that the Nazis were so close to Moscow. It was just if they wouldn't have got delayed with Churchill being stubborn in the Balkans, and if that was a huge one. Like that was a very interesting unintended consequence. Like Churchill would just not give up on Greece, and that actually delayed Barbarossa. But then Hitler also could have made Barbarossa better. He was also He wasn't brilliant. He was a
Yeah, if
nut.
not for the
But
nail,
so if he
uh,
wouldn't have been stubborn and like try to take everything
they
evenly
could have had
as
a
it
whole
went
lot more
east, and he would have listened to Heinz Guderian,
resources. Yeah,
they could have just went straight to the the actual objective, just take Moscow. But
yeah.
yeah, no,
And then,
you're right. I was just trying to help the Russians there, but yeah, no,
right. I mean that. Yeah,
winter's their big one.
in events. Well, needless to say, Russia doesn't like NATO at their front door. They, you know, this. They're not the Soviet Union anymore, but they also, have a shared history of this alliance was made specifically to oppose them. So of course they're sensitive about it. And so maybe NATO, uh, if it doesn't need to die, needs to change radically. That's a scary proposition because what's Europe going to turn into? Germany's going to have to defend itself. Germany's going to have to rearm themselves. The rest of the Europe is still going to kind of get a pit in their stomach if Germany seriously rearms, which they're
I think at this
probably
point
going to have to do. They
I
got no
think it
choice.
well they are just not rearm but arm more. They have a substantial military. But
Yeah,
for
I understand their tanks are not maintained very well.
okay, they have a substantial military as far as militaries are concerned, but considering how massive the German economy and population are, yeah, they're kind of and being, the main thing that's going on in Europe. Yeah, okay, fair.
And not having a reliable source of energy still.
Yeah. Them in China should have phone calls about that and
Right.
yeah, sing woes to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, well, I wonder, well, if anybody most have the pit in their stomach, would be the French. But I would think nowadays, just the way the dynamics of the world are shifting, seems like the French would like nothing more than to have their closest friend get a lot more, weapons in their neck of the wood. But yeah, and I don't understand enough about the sentiments of the Europeans and how they still feel about the last 150 years.
Yeah. Well, I suppose they're happy that they haven't had a world war, another one.
Mm-hmm.
Europe managed to go at least better part of a century without cross-continent war. So maybe they're ungrateful.
But anyway, I think we could go quite a bit into the what the future of NATO is and what
Right.
should be done there.
I don't know if that's a paradigm shift like globalism is, but there isn't
yeah, I don't think it's quite
much
well.
keeping NATO together. There's very little momentum to keep NATO like it was 30 years ago. So there's not much keeping it together, and there's a whole lot that can tear it apart and tear Europe apart, like their single currency, which appears to be a failed experiment at this point. But what are you going to do? Just freeze time and switch out euros for lira and francs and I don't know how you go.
Oh, the Greeks would be like, you made us go through all this. We're just going back to the drachma. Fuck you.
Well, Greece would absolutely love to go back to the drachma.
I guess so.
If they could, I mean, it's very nice to be able to print your own currency.
Yeah, because I guess whenever they had troubles, they had to go to Frankfurt and appeal to them, and which just further enslaved them essentially.
The Germans were like,
people gives you money, but you're ours now. Yeah.
Yes. You're gonna behave. You're gonna, well.
You are indebted forever, Chris.
yeah. Southern Europe in general is got lots of marks against it that make it hard to compete with Northern Europe. Anyway, um,
But yeah,
you
so
have little countries that can't control their own fiscal policy, or no, they can't control their own monetary policy, but they can have their own fiscal policy. It's gonna there's gonna be lots of bad feelings, and I don't know if that's gonna work out. So I mean, yeah, Europe is
oh,
just
it's not working out. So it's already working out quite bad.
right.
we
Right.
don't have we
But
don't have
well,
we don't
work
have
out in the sense that
hypotheses.
the euro is going to be here 10 years from now.
Oh,
I mean, it's in question.
well, I think you answered the question before. It's just that it will. Yeah, like
It will, and it will
like
suck.
previously on the show, I asked Mark Blythe about this, and he says it's not going anywhere. And I think you sort of addressed the question. Was that it's like, well, what are they going to do? Like just freeze time and just like set up the old currencies again? And I think it would just have to completely everything would have to completely blow up to the point where they're going to want to reestablish
Right.
those the currencies again.
Yeah. And at that point, yeah, currency will be the least of your worries. So maybe Trump was right in the sense that he um,
Well, he was
went
right
up
on
where other
NATO.
politicians were.
He was right on NATO at least in that it resonated with people, and
Right.
that was something that turned out
And he
people
actually
really
did
cared about.
something. He actually did something about it when other politicians have been talking about it and didn't really do much. Just kind of let the NATO's. It was easy. It was the path of least resistance to let that status quo of NATO and expanding NATO.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, yeah, we were giving Europe free protection ultimately, and it was
Well, and us.
yeah.
Help!
In return, Europe
Help!
would protect us. In return, Europe would be on our side against the
No, I
Soviets.
meant us. Like you're often forgotten frosty little neighbors to the north.
Oh,
Mm.
you guys, yeah.
Yeah. You're covering our ass too.
You can see Russia from
Yeah.
Canada, China.
Well, that's our biggest concern is northern sovereignty with the Russians. Well, that's really our only concern. And
Are,
it's
are they like being especially assertive in the North Pole, or I mean,
yeah,
on your end
yeah,
of
yeah, especially assertive
the world?
is is a good way to put it. They keep thinking more and more like that. As they keep going further up the ice sheet, that this is their area, and there's serious concerns about the sovereignty of our northern waters, and our old friends, Father Britain, are wanting to put more boats around that neck of the woods to make sure things are stable because our navy is stupid. Or not, our navy isn't stupid; it's just shitty, and our government's stupid and doesn't have any interest in the military anymore. Only if well, even when during the Harper government, that was 9.5 years. It's not like he did a whole bunch to reinvigorate the military. And so it's not clear that even the Tories came back into governments that they would do much. There's really a lack of interest in the military in Canada when there is, a clear military concern. And that would be the same thing as, if the Russians did start giving us a hard time, and if the Britain didn't have enough to help us out, we would come hat in hand to the south and say, please, Washington, do something about this. Yeah,
Right.
yes. So there's a lot of the world
And we probably
that's been taken essentially, military welfare from
yeah.
the Americans, which is funded by tax money of Americans.
So yeah, well, that world is probably going to be shifting a lot quicker now. And Trump was he was the first politician to actually do something about it in the sense that, well, what did he do? how did he? How did he like force Europe to spend more on the military? I'm
Well, he
not sure they
didn't.
even have yet.
No, he was just pushing them to do so to try to increase proportion of GDP on
Right.
military spending so that they
But
so
lots of
that
politicians have at least acknowledged that
mm.
on both sides. Um, but the problem
no,
never changed.
no, he tried to implement something within the confines of NATO so that it was determined that each member nation had to spend a higher amount of
Right.
GDP on military, but nothing really went through. But there's still the war of words and the sentiment, and I'm sure if he would have got another term, that would have
Maybe
definitely
Europe
carried on.
is less confident in the umbrella of the U.S. than they ever were before.
Oh, especially with Trump wouldn't have helped that in itself. But I think you're right. I don't think the Europeans are as confident with the U.S. leading the pack as they were.
The day may come where
20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago.
We better. It's up to us to protect ourselves because we're not sure that the U.S. is going to step in.
Mm-hmm.
He made some overt. Trump rather made some overt moves towards Taiwan. When he first got elected, he was talking about recognizing Taiwan as its own country and pretty radical stuff for any American politician to say. And China did the freeze out, and Trump actually caved to that. I mean, China was like, "We're not speaking with you until you acknowledge one China." And so Trump had to backpedal to at least get the ball rolling with making some sort of deal with China. But he also pushed some diplomatic boundaries as far as U.S. officials uh, visiting and working with Taiwan on official business, which was pretty no in the years before. And it seemed like the Biden administration is taking that same tact in dealing with Taiwan as a nation, although not calling it a nation. I heard lately there's some wishy-washy where Biden said something pretty strong-winded as far as being as far as protecting Taiwan, and then later the White House does its clarification, which just waters everything down. So.
Right, yeah, because Biden's statement was that we will defend Taiwan if there is so an attack from the mainland, full stop. But yeah, I wasn't so sure as to what then what the White House was doing to try to no, clean this up.
There seemed to be some panic in the administration over that, and they weren't. There are some elements that weren't prepared for that.
And so it seems like the United States is getting themselves into an unwinnable situation. If they do take that position, we're going to back Taiwan no matter what. Well, then if China actually does something, well then
we're going to have to put up. Yeah.
Then here comes the big war, which will not just involve China and Taiwan and the United States, which is already an immense conflict we have not seen in our lifetime, and has not been for since 1945. But then Japan would get involved, and probably Australia and Britain, perhaps Korea and the Philippines and Canada,
Vietnam.
Yeah. Vietnam's a very likely ally of the United States.
India would be,
and then
a bloody nose.
But then, if it spills over westward and, Pakistan, if not only if India attacks, it goes on the side of Taiwan and the Americans, but also if Pakistan gets involved, and then there's that.
Yeah, there's a path of escalation.
There's the two borders there, the India-China conflict and India-Pakistan. Then,
right.
the calamity would just be unimaginable. So anyway, the United States have that option where there's the war, or if
Well,
they
the scary thing is that
but
China may actually escalate the war, even if it is totally not in their interest, and even if they would ultimately lose. It's possible that the CCP believes their own bullshit and uh, believes that they could win, or that they're so desperate to rally the people at home and give them something to worry about other than them, because they've had a whole lot of shit thrown at them, in rapid succession, that they're insecure, and when you're insecure, you're more, you got a higher chance of doing something stupid or crazy or random or chaotic, because if you're at a disadvantage, chaos is your ally.
And it might not. It could also be something different that would yield the exact same results. Maybe a complete lack of insecurity, but extreme confidence.
Okay, where
they just know
they buy
that
their own bullshit,
yeah,
or
yeah.
where they're actually as strong as they think they are, or as they say they are.
No, they think they're as strong as whatever degree, but they're really want to have that level of unification and regional dominance,
They feel like they can
and to present that they can do what they said they did,
right,
or do what they say that they want to. So
right.
it could be either or, maybe a mix of both. But yeah, if the United States are trying to make a move to where they're going to try to do call China's bluff, well, China could do the same thing, and then so then that's the second thing. Like if the Americans put themselves in that position, could be the war, and the other one is also, which is a lose. Nobody wants that kind of war. And then the other lose is that they say we're going to defend Taiwan no matter what. The Americans back out. The Chinese look immensely powerful. The Americans look pathetic.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
so
that would be a huge pivotal moment.
So unless I'm missing something, like I just see that position of we'll defend Taiwan no matter what as just sort of a lose-lose, and maybe that's the only way it can go. I don't know. Maybe that's still the okay.
Because we just have to be willing to put war on the table. And yes, it's very likely that China will respond to that. But if we don't, we'll have that situation where American prestige will be, mortally wounded, and that would really throw a monkey wrench into the future.
So if the United States never fully backed Taiwan in the first place and the Chinese took Taiwan, would that impact American prestige?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. But also, there's also trade interest, I believe.
We let a massive democracy that produces all our microchips go down to China, and now China has open access to the Pacific.
Yeah.
Where before they were pretty well hemmed in. I mean, just radical strategic change that I think if the U.S. wants to keep its dominance, it has to draw the line there. And if that means it's probably better we have a war now than later, I believe, because China doesn't have a whole lot of friends right now. They've got a whole lot of problems on the home front. Yeah, they got some whiz bang hypersonic weapons, and that could do terrible things to our fleet and even mainland possibly. But China is a whole lot more vulnerable, and we could cut off their energy, and we could cut off their inputs to their food supply, and
Would they not still get energy from Russia?
probably.
And would that be
I don't
adequate?
know. Yeah, I don't know how well they could do it and how well they could defend those supply lines. And having Russia as an ally is a pretty shitty deal. You know, that's a wild card, and Russia would probably not want to get involved at all. You know, they probably wouldn't. They sell them some oil on the sly, but they I don't see them as wanting to hitch the wagon to China.
But the thing is, if the Russians don't get involved militarily, but they trade with China as much as they feel like,
Yeah.
then it would be too bold for the Americans to do anything against the Russians. Because then,
Yeah, that would be sticky. Yeah, what do? You bomb a
because
pipeline in Russia,
the Russians have gotten away with a lot. We invade Georgia. What you gonna do about
right?
it? Fuck you.
Yeah. Were you gonna cry? Yeah.
Yeah. We give China oil. Fuck you.
Yeah. I don't know if it'd be enough. I don't know if they've got the infrastructure up and da 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 da. Uh, they're primarily selling it to Europe, but maybe they could. It's harder to defend a fixed supply lines like that, especially infrastructure related. One cruise missile.
Oh yeah. So protection from the air, because it'd be so interior and northern. But yeah, like that'd be the first thing that the
You could
Americans
hit it just
would want to.
inside the Chinese line, and can make it really difficult.
Mm-hmm.
China doesn't have very many friends now, and they're out trying to make friends. And they were doing a pretty good job until COVID hit, and that kind of was a monstrous setback. So,
Well, it helped them with the Balkans, but those aren't big friends. Like the pandemic, won them Serbia, it would appear.
Serbia, Pakistan, and Russia.
No, they were friends with yeah. Well, I'm not sure. Well, they're we said before with Russia, they're not really friends. It's like their drug dealer neighbor who they're on good terms with. But yeah, it's just pretty much seems like Serbia and Pakistan, and then whatever sort of interests they've managed to accumulate in Africa so far. And it just seems like they're kind of still sort of in the infancy of that agenda, whatever they're trying to accomplish. Yeah, and not much
China
else.
Or Pakistan?
China.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, if we're not willing to risk war, then yeah, American preeminence is done, because China's going to keep asserting themselves.
But would they keep asserting themselves past Taiwan? Would that just sort of be the end of it? They just, it's not.
It could be.
They've never really they've never really noted any interest like more in that region for like some imperial conquest. But yeah, it would affect. It would affect the United States and allied countries quite a bit. With the military advantage and the trade.
We just let a vibrant working democracy get taken over by authoritarians. That would just look absolutely terrible.
And the microchips. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, at that point, no country would trust us to be on their side, and they may try to curry favor with China.
So what
each other,
if
favorable?
So let's say for whatever reason Trump won and he was the president now, what would he what do you think he would be doing with the situation around Taiwan?
Hmm. Yeah, that's a good one. I'm not sure what he would do because Trump really didn't want war. He talked a good game, but maybe that would be just what we needed if he would just talk a good game. Oh, I got a big button. I've got more nukes than you. You know,
Pretty dangerous game.
let's do this. Um, and China may be more inclined to believe that he was bluffing more than any other politician, though. I mean, I think China understands Trump pretty well
Hmm.
and knows that he oversells everything.
Hmm. And is
And
only interested in himself.
right,
Hmm.
yeah, as opposed to the country, and you can drive a wedge between these two.
Hmm. Of course, with Biden, they're back to the system they had before.
Yeah,
Okay, well, I
right.
think we
Yeah,
we can.
same old, and yeah, and even I think the White House, went back to their message of strategic ambiguity, which is we're not telling you what cards we have or when we're going to throw any cards down. And that's not a terrible strategy, but it's probably run its course. Along that vein of shit Trump got right,
Next, because I think we can. I think it's going to be a pretty big topic for the next few weeks or few months. Is what's going on there in Taiwan. So we'll come back to
yeah,
that. But yeah, then back to Trump doing things right from time to time.
we had a decade of politicians saying that we're going to get out of Iraq and Afghanistan. We're going to end the war in Afghanistan, and it wasn't until
Mhm.
Trump made a deal with the Taliban. And you could say it's a crappy deal, and it wasn't a great deal. But he was actually getting us out where, Obama said that he was going to get us out for a decade. And, uh, you know, uh, mission creep won. So that there was no pathway out unless we actually made it. The path of least resistance was to just sit there and throw money at it and allow it to be corrupt, basket case country stuck in the middle.
And the big thing is that's just what a lot of people wanted. They wanted it to end, and Obama promised
Yeah.
that, and he didn't deliver. Twice, and then
So eventually you got
that was
yeah.
that was a big platform for Trump, was to pull the military back, and a lot of people really liked that. And again, back to like the
And
perspective,
he got Republicans liking it.
yeah, which is a big shift.
Yeah.
And back to the perspective Bernie voters, like there had to be some too who weren't just like mad at the system and fuck you and be like, hey, this guy doesn't want to have these wars continuing all over the place, which is a position, which is a hill I die on. So
Yeah.
okay, there we go. So yeah, like that's one that really resonated with a lot of people, and a lot of critics had a hard time working with. Not that it's not that he followed through with any of it so well, but just taking it as a position, it was the right strategic move for him, I suppose.
Yeah. Oh, I think it was, but I mean, he actually made moves to follow through on it, which no politician had done for 20 years before him. Yeah, he was like, we haven't shit, let's get off the pot. And so,
Yeah, I think some of his diet, like, yeah, there's that. I was worried about, him as far as being this peacemaker. Like, there's like with his war of words with North Korea and all that. You have this highly capricious, nincompoop nutcase who is just he's.
Which one are we talking about now?
Oh yeah, Trump. Yeah. Well, and I wouldn't say Kim Jong Un is very capricious. He's pretty consistent in his shittiness as a genocidal monster.
He doesn't change his mind. Okay.
Yeah, he's pretty much. I think the Kims sing the same tune all the time. Don't change much in how much they suck, but yeah. So I guess I'm getting too off track and just looking at Trump as a foreign policy entity as a whole, and I guess I should just stick on to the issue of him promising to end, the wars.
Not just promising, because lots of politicians did that, but actually taking steps. To do that.
Yeah, that's true.
And credit to Biden for sticking with the deal and actually getting us out of Afghanistan, which it was not a foregone conclusion. We could have been there for another 10 years until somebody made us leave.
Mm-hmm.
It's like being there was the path of least resistance.
And I think Biden was in a position that he couldn't do anything about. If he would have shifted the plan too much, he would have.
The Taliban would make him pay for it.
No. Well, the electorate would have made him pay for it. If he would have changed his mind on pulling out, he would have.
I'd hope so. I don't know.
So many people would lose their mind about that. It would have been too tough of a position. Trump moved along too much for
getting out of Afghanistan wasn't just a Democrat issue at that point.
Yeah, it wasn't anything that Biden could turn the van around in the middle of the highway. But yeah, so what else did Trump do then?
He was the only person of his party or the Democrats who was against the WTO. But that goes back on the globalism thing.
Yeah, yeah.
At that point, I think I'm running out of things.
So what's? I'll try to think of a couple more, because that was. I think a lot of the things I was always trying to over the time of the Trump presidency was not so much point out like things Trump was doing right, but just show how overblown some of the criticism was,
right.
and how he would get criticized for things that his predecessors were also doing. Yeah. But I think that was a lot of my focus of just not like this sort of mindless wholesale slamming of Trump to do, because it's so easy, and everybody is doing it, and you can pat yourself on the back for doing it. It's easy to do. But what is like so to go back, and I think you might have mentioned that today, but you did mention it 2 days ago when we were previously talking, which wasn't a part of this airing. But like, what is the overarching concept of all that then, of that you're trying to get at with all the things that Trump actually did right?
I don't know if there really is one necessarily. I mean, but maybe just backing up from globalism, as in global trade and global defense of the seas, and the U.S. involvement across the world, whether it's in Afghanistan or with NATO, that the U.S. definitely made a pivot at that point under Trump, and that backing away from globalism, certain degree of protectionism. Biden put in, I think her name is Catherine Tai, and she's actually Taiwanese, and she's a trade lawyer. And so, she's built a career on suing countries for this and that, So he picked specifically a Taiwanese lawyer to be the trade representative. So, I mean, already that, seems like a fairly adversarial position. When Iran was attacking ships in the Persian Gulf,
Mm-hmm.
and I think they even hijacked and brought home one or two. Neither Trump nor Biden did anything about it. Where I think before that would just be unacceptable. And so it appears, and it remains to be seen whether Trump is ultimately right. Um, but I think he may be of pulling back from that global regime. I wanted to say empire, but that's not right. Just the regime that the United States built to box in the Soviets. It's just no longer relevant. Everybody knew it, but it was the path of least resistance. It was what we've always known, and it was, people made careers.
It was sort of from 1991 to 2016. It was sort of empire for the sake of it.
Yeah, and Bush, 43 kind of showed us some of our limits if we, take our preeminence too much for granted. That, yeah, I mean, we can do some amazing shit, but it's hard and it requires sacrifice, and so we got to choose wisely. Iraq wasn't a great choice.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump called that out and got applause for it from Republicans.
Mm-hmm.
So made Republicans anti-war and suspicious of the FBI and the CIA,
Mm-hmm.
and I think ultimately those may be good things.
And at the very least, he was right in the sense that so much of those positions were appealing to many Americans, hence his initial success. And even the success he had in the second election, because he still held on to a large swath of the electorate. So,
well, he barely lost to cognitively declining, swampy guy. So I mean, you say what you want of Biden. You could say a lot, but that just makes Trump look that much worse because he lost to this.
That's true.
Old school, old fart. None of it makes sense. I think that kind of speaks to people kind of just sick of Trump's antics and
the antics and the
narcissism.
And the pandemic clusterfuck.
Right.
Yeah, just so much of that I would have, just turned, more, median American, very off. They would think that, somebody could even
Trump would have had a much better shot if it weren't for COVID.
That's my strong position. Yeah, it's with everything. There's a whole bunch of things that cause election, but that's a huge one. Is if he would have done that a lot better. I just think of
Trump was at a handicap.
You to take more of a middle of the road American in the states that matter. They might be iffy about a lot of the lockdown measures and all sorts of policies, but they might also be thinking, neighbor Jim died and we could have done a lot better. Or grandma died.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I don't know if there's anybody who COVID is not touched.
And they just look at it. It's they might not be so sure about what their governor did, or not really know too much about what the other countries might have done. They get looked at just like Trump's performance in these very well watched press conferences, very well watched and well covered press conferences, and how much of a absolute horror show some of them were.
Yeah,
like just unbelievable. I can't just surreal moments I'd have where I've just been paying acute attention to this whole Trump presidency, And
And
even
it would
like,
have been so easy for
and
him
I'm
too if he just shut up and just let other people do the work for him, and he just go up there, look presidential, and say something,
talk for 10 minutes, and then
and go play
allow.
golf. Yeah, yeah. It didn't.
No, not even
Somehow
play
he
like.
felt like it had to be a big production, and he had to be in the center of it.
Yeah, and that's not surprising. That's a very Trump thing to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, the best thing for like not even go golf, because then that would have made him look like callous.
Okay. Right.
But like just
Yeah.
like go in the White House hangout room and just keep watching Shark Week and eating
Yeah.
French fries.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just let the everybody else do everything. Go to the press conferences, say something like unifying and motivating for 7 minutes, and then let let the health secretary and Fauci speak, and then just leave it at that. But yeah, he just completely screwed it up, and I think that it didn't get past. It got enough people heeded notice to that was going on, and I imagine a lot of people would have thought, we could have done better, and somebody like Joe Biden probably would have done at least a little bit better, and that's enough.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's probably
by a lot,
true.
yeah.
Yeah, and I would imagine that as much as I hate Joe Biden and don't hold him in much regard, with the positives that Trump did in the pandemic, they're kind of few and far. No, they were few and far between, and there was long periods of him doing nothing good.
Yeah.
And I don't think Biden would have done. Generally, I think Biden would have done a pretty bad job handling the pandemic, but I think he would have done better
Right.
than Donald Trump. No, well, it's pandemic still going on, and he is the president. But that period,
And right.
that period of the pandemic,
testing is down, and we still don't have rapid tests, and or we don't have a big coordinated rollout of rapid tests.
Yeah, whatever it is, 38% of people won't get vaccinated, and he's not doing a good job of figuring that one out.
Well, that I don't think is his fault. It's the Biden vaccine now, and some people just don't want to get. And it's not even just the anti-Biden people, although I think it's mostly that.
It's not his fault, but it's still his responsibility. He's the president.
To
try to do
everyone.
Don't try to do something more than what he's doing to try to get more people on board.
Yeah,
and also not
absolutely
jump on what's fashionable now of marginalizing and just wholesale shitting on the people who are unfortunately not being vaccinated.
I don't know if Biden was doing that. I mean, they're definitely in the press. There's a lot of shitting to be going on. I don't know if Biden was doing that specifically. Maybe use strong language in that you should get vaccinated so you don't infect grandma, or some line like that. Maybe.
Right. I think it's more along the lines of we all need to get vaccinated, and that's the only thing we need to do. But he's not. It's very clear that there's a problem with people being divided over the issue of vaccines, and he's not doing very much.
Vaccines only one piece of the sandwich. There's a whole bunch of other.
That of course too, but he's not really doing much to put out the flames of this fire of people being so divided over the vaccines, and that such a large percentage of the population are have an aversion to them.
A large amount of people are going to be averse to whatever Biden does, and kind of like people averse to Trump. And
that's a good point.
And we're seeing the same stuff on the right now, where if it's Biden's idea, that it must be horrible, and so he should anticipate that there's some people that will not cooperate, and we develop other measures. Masks is part of it. Air filtering, things outside when possible, distancing, and rapid tests. You can see where COVID is doing an outbreak, and we could head off half of them. We cut the R value in half. That may not be enough. COVID may not die after that, but uh, it would be, controlled as opposed to uncontrolled, growing exponentially, and then it would be a matter of chasing it down. Yeah, he could be more vigilant on all of that. But I want to get another drink. We've been on for
Well,
4 hours.
that long? Well, we left for a while. I don't think it'll be that long. But yeah, I think we'll wrap it up here. And so yeah, we went over all the
I think we
things.
did. I mean, 4 hours of a couple of lefties talking about shit that Trump got right. That's quite an accomplishment.
Yeah, we should get a trophy, or at least
a prize.
One of those little like crappy wood veneer plaques that are poorly routed on the edges and have like a little pretend brass thing in the middle.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, we should get one of those. Anyway, yeah, let's call it there. Thanks for listening to the show, everybody. There'll be more episodes coming for you in the future. Be sure to check out endcoronavirus.org and worldhealthnetwork.global for more information on the organization. Thanks to Michelle from Make Good Together for doing the graphics for the show, and a huge thanks to Tracy, the noble producer of the show. If you listen to the show on either YouTube or podcast format, well, they are available on both, and be sure to like and subscribe and comment on those. All the best. Till next time.